So let's talk owls. Owls are really cool. Owls are incredibly cryptic. So if you're out hunting at night, that means you want everybody to leave you alone during the day so you can get some really good quality sleep. Because we all know that owls get grumpy when they don't get enough quality sleep. So why are there so few grumpy owls? The reason is that they have a great night's sleep because they're super well camouflaged. Now, this camouflage presents challenges to us when we want to get in there and draw their little owly bodies. So we're going to take a look today at understanding the plumage of owls, and then how can we render it. We'll be looking at techniques with pencil. We'll be looking at some techniques with pen and also watercolor for how do we sort of suggest that super complex plumage of owls. And I've made a bunch of mistakes. And so learning from those, I'm going to show you some of the things that I've learned to help make my owls look more owly. And I think it's going to be fun. Let me see here. I am going to bounce over to a screen share. Share screen. And there we go. And I think that, Avea, can I just check with you? Are you seeing owls on the left and my hand on the right?
Yes. There's a bit of a lag when seeing your hand. Oh, I just saw Water Bear. Oh, hi, Water
All
Bear.
right. So I am going to, let's see. So there's a little bit of lag. If I put my hand over here and I snap, how much of a lag are you seeing?
It's actually not as bad as I thought. So yeah, yeah, it's actually pretty close.
Okay, we're good?
Yeah, we're pretty good.
Excellent. All right, on with the owly show. So here's a couple of owls that have been woken up in the middle of the daytime, and they're saying, excuse me, we're incredibly cryptic, so you really shouldn't have seen us, and please go back. We're about to go back to sleep. So they can do this thing where they really just look like part of a broken stump. But look at those feathers. I'm seeing there's blotches of white, blotches of tan, all that sort of stuff in there. The eyes are hidden in vertical dark streaks in here. They're sort of making the whole thing look like, well, not so much a critter. That's what makes them great daytime nappers. That's what makes them challenging to draw. So I am going to back up here. And all right, I'm going to type in owls, O-W-L-S. Oh. O-W-L-S, owls. Owls, there's owls. All right, so I've got two websites loaded here. I have Seeing Birds and Bird Pixel both up, and I just put owls into their search bar. And so I just get a ton of really tasty owliness. And what I'm going to do to start is let's jump over to this barred owl. Not that barred owl, this barred owl, this barred owl. Hello. No. Oh, there we go. There's the barred owl. All right, so here's this little barred owl. And what I'd like to do is just use this owl to help us initially see some of the structure in the owl feathers. And then we're going to get into more of the complex stuff. So if I'm looking at the owl from the front, I'm going to give myself just a little vertical line to be the general posture of my owl. I'm giving myself a little ball forehead. And then I think of the owl head as sort of sitting into a little kind of rounded bottom neck. So it's a little sort of rounded neck. And then that rounded neck is going to fit into your owly body. Here's our little branch that sticks across. And when we're looking at the owly body, notice that there's a big shadow zone that comes up on the bottom here. So there's a little divide going on here. There actually is an area of bare skin in here. The owl has feathers that come down the side and feathers that come down the side. It has a bald spot in the middle, and you can actually see these feathers doing a comb over. The little bars on these feathers show us kind of the direction that they go. So we're kind of coming down and then in to sort of sweep over and cover up that little bald spot. So what we're going to do when we look at owls is we're going to think of the front of the owl. We're going to think of the head essentially as a ball. And then we're going to round it out on the side so we can attach that. Those rounded sides are going to fit into an extended neck zone. All right, so this is going to be, so you've got the head, you've got the neck or the breast of the bird. So this is technically called the breast, but I'm calling the neck. Well, the feathers are attached to the bird's neck, but we'll call it, but they usually call the bird's breast. And then there are the belly and flank feathers down here, these big feathers down here, and those are in 1-2 different zones. So that's some general structure. And the usually across here in the neck, you're going to have little small feathers, and then they're progressively getting bigger down here on the breast. And they kind of do a cool thing as they're kind of coming down. You'll see that they're if you could actually see the edges of a lot of these feathers, which you can't, so don't draw in the edges of the feathers. Don't draw your owls like a pine cone. That was a mistake that I used to do. I would draw in all the feathers and then wonder why my owl looked like a pine cone. Because you look at that bird, you really don't see the edges of those feathers very prominently. But because a bunch of them line up, these feathers can make really distinctive and interesting patterns going down the front of the bird. They don't always line up. Sometimes you've got a few lining up and then the next one's kind of over here, kind of cattywampus on the side. So there will be some imperfection. So it's not going to be that super like tight like the scales on a fish. Well, let's make this one here tilt in a little bit. But that's generally what is kind of a pattern that's going on. In these lower belly feathers, there's a couple of, there's 3 different patterns that we want to be aware of. We can either see a feather, I'm going to draw a little feather here. So here's the central shaft of my feather. I'm going to lightly draw around here kind of a curved edge. And in here is going to be some of the down feathers. So this is, I'm sort of drawing in some of these little kind of downy feathery parts here. And then here is this feather edge. Putting in a few of these little kind of notches to make it look cool. That's my general feather shape. So some feathers have bars. And if I have bars, Sometimes these kind of go up a little bit in the parts here. I have a feather with a series of horizontal stripes across them. Now, another way that these feathers can be patterned is you will see, so I'm going to lightly sketch in another feather here. And here's that little shaft, and I'm not going to make the shaft really kind of clear all the way down. Here is some of the downy base. So a lot of feathers have a really fluffy downy base, so that the part close to the body is just super puffed out and insulated. As you're making these little kind of notches in the edges of the feather, imagine these the veins that make up the shaft of this kind of coming in like this. So you're going to kind of curve them. The ones coming down here are coming in here. So it's just a little notch like that, a little notch like that. So another pattern that you can have is a streak. And what that will be is around that central shaft area. There is a central mark. And that's what you're seeing on the lower belly of this barred owl. And then there is another pattern that you're going to find very often on the bellies of owls that is kind of a combination of these two patterns. Feather like this. It makes you want to run out and find feathers and draw them. Fun to do. Just don't put the notches really symmetrical. So don't get one here, one here, one here, one here, one here, one here. So like I've got two on this side, I've got one on this side. That just makes it look a little bit more natural. So this next one is sort of a combination. It's going to take some of what if we take some of the ideas from this one and some of the ideas from this one and put those together. So I'm going to have.
Oh, Jack, could you raise the drawing just a little, please?
Yeah, good idea. Thank you. So here's going to be another streak that comes across here. But this time, what I'm going to see is a little bit of a mark. It's also going to connect these. So I have these multiple T's coming off, and sometimes you also kind of get almost kind of a point coming down on this. One reason why this can form into a point is that the dark parts of the feather, what's making them dark is melanin. It's a pigment in the feather. And so that melanin is actually a strengthening element in the feather. So the white part can erode much more quickly than the black part. And so you can get a little feather that really has a more of a pointed tip to it. And you can have And these will then be lined up on the belly of the owl. So you might get an owl. Let's have some sort of owl, lower owl belly here. I'm going to put a couple of toes just sticking over here on the branch, a couple of claws here, a couple of claws here, and just sort of suggest a little bit of owl fluff around those. 2 toes forward, 2 toes back on owls typically. So I'm not going to be seeing scale, scale, scale coming down the front of my owl. But what I will often see is that, here are these streaks, and look for places where some of those streaks may line up, right? What does that look like? Or there'll be other places where they don't. And here's a little. I find it most useful if there are this kind of feather just with the streaks, put those streaks in. If it's this kind with the streaks and the bars, put the streaks in first and then bar them out. When you're putting the streaks in, you're trying to figure out, what direction are those streaks pointing? Are they tilting in towards the bottom of where the feathers come together there? And feathers often get smaller towards the top. That's just a little bit in theory. Let's take a look at some photographs of owls and put this more into practice. All right, going over here, and they're looking for ooh, that's looking nice. A little bit of eagle owl there. Oh boy, yeah. Let's just dive in with the tummy of this young great horned owl. Again, the website I use are birdpixel.com and seeingbirds.com. So what's going on? We've got a lot of horizontal ones, and then up in the lower breast, and then as we are up in the flanks down here, but up in the breast area, there are some of these sort of zones kind of coming in darker streaks. Look at that. Okay, that shows it really nicely. You can see all those little feathers coming down. And you can look at the little arrows between these. You can see that's the central shaft of feathers coming here, feathers coming down here, here, things coming down in here. Yep. So these are coming together towards the middle here, kind of down in here, straighter on the sides. And then up in that upper breast area, it's this irregular pattern, what I call consistently inconsistent. So how do we suggest this? So these are going to be really thick bars with some lines, then no major big bars coming out here. Right. I'm going to, if I were sketching this out in the field, I would probably start just by a little line that takes me around the back of its head and its back, something like that. And then put in a little head, Paul. And then what is the angle on this side? It's going to come out and there. Once I've got that shape around the top and the sides, I'm then going to put in the ball of the body right in here. This one is looking in this direction, so I'm going to put in a center line, a little bit of a V to help me kind of orient the face of this. But this isn't so much a workshop on drawing the face of the owl. I'm interested in how do I render those feathers on the body. So I'm going to think of this upper breast as one area of texture. I then have the center line of my owl coming down here. The branch comes in underneath it. See some tail feathers sticking out down the edges of those wings. So the wings are coming out here, then that's tail that is sticking out beyond them. All right, so how do I go about this? Actually, one more little detail. I'm seeing part of the owl's wing here. I'll just put in a little dark line there where we're going to do that. All right. On this, I want to get a sense of the shape of this owl. If I just start drawing streaks in, it can end up looking really flat. But if I first kind of think to myself, this is this shape that is kind of arching out like this, kind of bulging out. I've just put in a few light guidelines, and those are going to then help me kind of shape and sculpt this. So now as I am putting in these blotches, I want to think of them wrapping around this subject. I don't have to match them blotch by blotch, but I want to sort of see how this, I'm kind of got this little curve in this. That's just suggesting that that's bulging out this way. And what about here? So out here, it's going to bulge out a little bit this way, and then more straight towards you as you're kind of coming in here. I'm using a fairly soft pencil, allows me to kind of get nice darks in here. I've got just sort of this sort of blotchiness of this nice big blotch over here. And then there are some little bars across that. And so I'm going to just think of, again, this rounded shape. Essentially what is going on over here, I'm envisioning part of a ball. And if there were vertical bars going around it, they're going to be wrapping this way over here, and this way over here. And if there are horizontal lines that are going around it, those are this. They're kind of coming up on the sides. See that? Coming up on the sides around here. So with putting in my little horizontal lines, I want to think of those as kind of curving down on here and curving in this way, kind of curving down in here. And then they can be more straight in the middle. So those marks give a sculpture to that part of my owl. I'm going to leave a little white mark in here where my belly feathers are coming together. But let's now think about what the architecture of this is here. I'm going to simplify this shape out here to kind of a curve across the top and sort of a teardrop coming down. And what I'm thinking is that is going to be, here's the template for what I'm thinking about for over in here on my owl. I'm going to think of this as lines coming sort of straight down in here, lines coming more kind of curving around in this. And in this part here, it's kind of sticking out a little bit more. So it's gonna be a little bit more steep. I'm gonna actually tilt these up like I am here. Let's tilt those up more. Tilt those up more. So kind of coming down more on the side and then sweeping across. That's sort of the direction for those sorts of marks. And now as I kind of get in here, I'm making a kind of a variable mark, a little bit of a wiggle in my pencil line that I bounce down on that a little bit. So my pencil line, as I'm kind of coming across here, I don't want it to be like this. I want it to be, have a little bit of a jiggle, a little bit of a stutter in that line. And in some places I can kind of get lines up, or kind of connect them in a little bit more. Other places letting them be consistently inconsistent. But I want it to really have a feeling of down this way and then cutting across. Notice I'm not following this line for line, what is on the owl in the photograph, because my brain can't keep track of, like, am I on that line or that line? What about that next one? But I keep kind of glancing back there just to sort of refresh my brain on what the owl is doing, what that owl shape is. And every once in a while you can give yourself sort of a big kind of index line. Like down here, I want this really to kind of come down like this, and then it's gonna, there we go. So that means that in here, now that I have that kind of index line, I can fill in between those a little bit more easily. Give myself another index line down here. It's going to come down, and I'm going to give that one a little bit more of a point. Maybe there's a, just to kind of, yeah, that would be fun. And in here, I'm going to tilt up a little bit. And I can kind of fill in those. And now hummingbird hovering outside my window makes me want to go. So I get something that is kind of consistently inconsistent. But the wrap around these matches what I'm seeing in the reference. And that makes a big difference. The approximate spacing feels close to what it is. And I've got kind of a clear distinction between this zone up here and this lower zone down here. What about this piece over here? It's essentially a piece that has a curved top. It comes straight down on the side. This side is wrapping around to it, and then it has a little step like that down below. And what direction is it going? There's a little bit of a break in here, but these are really coming down at an angle. That's pretty cool. So we're going to come down in this area, and then in this area down a little bit less in here, and down a little bit across and up. So I'm just looking at what direction are these kind of the reference lines kind of going in on this one. I want to leave white in here and up in here. Okay. And so, let's give myself a reference line. Here, I'm going to get one steeper down in here. And is that, yeah, it's going to flip out there. And then these ones are just going to come more straight down to the edge. So these index lines, again, help me keep track of where I'm going. They will get sort of covered up by all sorts of other pencil lines. Now really starting to kind of come down more. Turn my hand at a different angle because it's easier to make my mark. Strengthen some little darks kind of here. Then the back in here is going to be just sort of a smorgasbord of of first the blotches, which are wrapping around this way. I think of like this body's wrapping around here. Any direction to those lines like that. And then there are little spots that fill in a lot of the rest of the space. Two toes forward on the L. Not going to do too much here with my owl face, but I couldn't help but want to put a little bit in here. A little fuzz here. The top of the forehead here, I'm just going to be putting in, I've got a little zone on the top of the head that is a triangle. The center of it comes through here. The center is not in the middle of it because, oops, the center is not in the middle of it because it's looking a little bit to the right. And so I'm going to, I can put a few little kind of bars going back in this, but overall it's just going to be I want to sculpt the head of the bar of the owl with these. Essentially, the lines on an owl are what artists call cross contour lines. Cross contour lines are lines that wrap around your subject. And when you got those, it's a real gift from nature because cross contour lines really help you describe the form of an object. We've got tail that is sticking down there, and we're seeing the lines generally with that axis in the tail. How far they're further apart. Okay. Now, if I wanted to put color on this, look at the color. There are sort of streaks of brown, then there are those darker areas, and then, but look at the whites. Really look at where you see white on the belly of this, because that's where you are going to not be putting paint. And sometimes when we're just really deliberate about putting the paint on, we don't spend as much time looking at first at where we're not putting that paint. And that's going to be really helpful in carving this bird. If I give myself nice dark marks on this, doing this with watercolor is going to be really, really straightforward. I'm going to first put some shadow on. I'm going to put some shadow in these lower areas down here. So if you look over at the photograph, you see sort of shadow in this zone down here. I've got shadow kind of coming down here. This area up here is more in light. I've got some more shadow down, lots of shadow down here, lots of shadow going on, lots of shadow down here. But I've got some shadow here and then down also into this area, a little bit in here. So what I will sometimes do is put in the shadow first. And you can mix up kind of a gray color. I will often use a kind of a purpley gray mixture that has a little bit of shadow violet, which is sort of a purple color. So I got some shadow violet on my palette. I don't want to put something like this down because it's going to be way too dark. So I'm going to kind of kick that back a little bit. And the way I make it lighter is by just squeezing my water brush, get a drop of water into my palette and pick that up, mix it around. Now test it down here on my page. And it's a little bit too anemic. I'm going to now get a little bit more paint into it. And I like that. All right, so I look back, I want my shadow to cut across here, come in here. I want my shadow to be down here. There's going to be a lot of shadow down in this area. A lot of shadow over here. My owl gets shadow in these feathers down in here, which wraps around the tummy. And my shadow, I'm going to get a little bit of shadow on the face. Put a little bit of shadow up in here. I do the shadow first. And the reason I do the shadow first is that the minute I try to put in other colors, if I've got other colors, especially dark colors in there, and I put the shadow over them, the shadow will then smear them. I'm just painting right over that watercolor. Now, I'm going to turn to what artists call the local color, which is the sort of like the color of the owl. So I'm getting a little bit of sort of the light ochre color from my palette, mixing that into my mixing area. Maybe with, he wants to be a little bit more red brown with that. So I've got some red brown that's already kind of smudged up in here. So I will kind of mix into that and I'll test that color. Okay, that's reasonable. And I am going to put it in intentionally blotchy. And I am putting it in some areas and not in others. I want this to be blotchy because there are those sort of blotches of white on my owl. Create a little bit of paint in my brush. Maybe I want this to be a little bit darker. Now it's warm. A little bit of gray on my brush. I'll put a few kind of gray blotches in. One over here. One down. Lastly, I'm going to grab a little bit of, actually I want a little bit more warm brown in some of the flanks of this. Okay. Now I'm going to get a little bit of dark value paint. I'm getting some Bloodstone Genuine. I'm going to mix that in with just some of the gray on my palette. Test that off on the sides to see if it is a real dark value, and it is. And I'm going to be putting in a few little details, sort of painting over some, but not tracing over all of these little lines. I want to kind of have a little bit of, you know, again, a little bit of, I want my any marks that I make to be, feel irregular. Blotchy. I don't want it to feel like a brush stroke. Comes up the dark spots. I'm getting a bit of reflection off them, but those will dry to a darker value in some of these lines. Think of yourself as drawing with your brush tip. Don't think of this as painting. You have a drawing tool, and you are drawing in some of these lines. Drawing, not painting. People tend to like press harder and be more like, oh, I'm just going to put some lip down here. And you think we're painting. But no, you're drawing with your brush tip. You don't have to go over all of them, because if I did, I would get impatient and just start to be messy. So this gives me the sense of this really complex plumage. I think I need to make it a little bit blotchier with some dark brown. So I'm going to get a little bit of darker brown on my finish. And I'm going to put in just some irregular spots down here. That gives me my sense of bird in the forest. Get rid of a little bit of the distraction of all those diagrams that I made. And that will dry into something that feels like foliage. Right now it's still a little bit glossy because of that. I want to, I can even cleaning my brush. So with a water brush, I just take an old sock. If I'm out in the field painting, it sits like that. But I find when I'm doing stuff in the studio, I just have it plopped on the table. This is a little gouache palette, and I'm going to just take a little bit of light color green gouache. There. I left the eye to the end. Why did I do that? Because one, it's kind of, it's like a little Christmas present for me to draw this eye. And it wasn't really the focus of this workshop, but it is fun to give my owl that. So I'm going to give my eye an owl. I'm going to try not to overdo the eye. Put a little bit of yellow in here. Keep my eye simple. There is, I'll show you what I'm going to be doing with this eye. I'm thinking of the eye basically as it's going to be a shape of kind of a large, dark pupil in it. But I also want there to be a shadow over the top part that you're going to see. So that is going to make the eye feel much more like it's part of the head of the bird. So for that, is the eye dry? Let's say because I'm really impatient. So putting a little bit of dark value into that. And I then have to let that totally dry before I put the people in. Maybe give myself a hint of yellow in the sky. And this is a mature bird that's kind of growing its feathers in, so it doesn't have those cool feather tufts that we'd see on a classic adult great horned owl. The eye is still wet, so I'm not going to put the people in yet. I'm going to put it in a little bit later. Not put it in too dark. I don't want it to overpower this and feel like a little black splotch right now. But that will happen later. For right now, we're just going to leave it as this little orphan Annie owl with no pupils. But also notice that the pupil in this eye on the left you kind of looks like it's almost cross-eyed. I'm not going to put it out here in the middle of the eye. I'm going to put it close in here. We had a workshop some time ago about drawing owls, and we're really looking at how that far eye really takes on a surprising shape. And you see it here as a little kind of pizza wedge with the dark in the best part of the pizza, that little bite at the tip. And I hope that this was a useful workshop for everybody in how to get some of the texture, that complex texture, to understand it, and not just kind of get something that, yeah, these are the colors, these are some of the patterns, but we can use that to sculpt the bird. And then the bird that you get feels, it feels like you've got dimension. You're helping somebody look at your flat piece of paper and envision that there are 3 dimensions there, and those cross contour lines, the vertical and the horizontal, that wrap around the bird, that carves our bird shape. I hope that this was a useful workshop. Let's first bounce over to our community and see if there's any questions that people have about this specific topic, about kind of the cross contouring or the texturing on the owls. And we'll see if we can address some of those. So if you have a question, just turn on your screen and kind of wave at me, and I will bounce over to you. You can also use the raise hand function. It is built into Zoom. And if there aren't any specific questions about this, or comments or thoughts or ideas, then we can bounce over to just some journal sharing. And not seeing any comments or questions. Does anybody have any journal pieces to share? I'm going to start with Tracy. Add you into the spotlight here. And Tracy, it's really good to see you. I'm going to, now you can unmute. There you are unmuted. Oh. That's good. You're good. We hear you.
So what I wanted to share is this eagle cam. One of these guys just hatched yesterday. I mean, sometime today, because I was watching last night till about 9. And
oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Where's the cam located?
It's in Florida, and I'll while we're chatting, when we're off me and I'm not concentrating, I'll go grab the link and drop it in the chat. But I can't do 2 things at once right now.
That's really cool. And so that one just hatched. This is its birthday. And it's, do you know what kind of eagle it is?
And I just couldn't see it. See the eggs out today, and 2 are there. So I keep taking screenshots so I can do some drawing of it later. But
oh, that's fun. Are you doing a citizen science project where you're part of the team that is sort of monitoring and kind of keeping track of who's hatching when?
I am not. I had surgery last month. I'm not fully recovered. I think I have about 3 hours of kind of productivity a day. So just kind of staying tuned in with my family is the main thing for me. And then this is
good priorities.
My stepping out of, it's sort of like being a toddler again. You can walk for a while, but then you fall on your bottom. And I'm just trying to be content with that process, because I'm not a patient healer as it comes out.
Oh, well, we wish you the best recovery. And glad you can be with us during that time.
Yeah, well, I think later in February, I'll definitely make all the classes, because I'm going to have to be essentially quarantined while I'm radioactive. So, well, it's not, I really struggle with the fact that I'm going to swallow the radioactive pill. Like, there's a part of me that's like, I wouldn't stab myself with a knife either. How am I going to make myself do this? But I'm sure I'll be okay. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll actually get it down, but I'm sort of like, will I have a mild freaking out session at the doctor? But we'll see.
Oh,
I'm sure they've
well,
seen it all before. They're
we
prepared for it.
we will be sending you our love and best thoughts, Tracy. I'm going to
Thank you.
remove.
I appreciate it. It does feel like I always think of you guys and what you guys are doing, and I hope at least to drop in and watch a little bit every day. So one of the things that I drew a little tiny pencil sketch here, and I wanted to make it bigger. So I did this, and I used this fun little tool that I found. It's a see-through little protractor. I mean, it comes in a little pad like this. So I was able to measure the angle and then kind of use the angles to replicate it. Because when I didn't try using the angles, I got some really funky shapes.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm trying to work on those. I'm still working on the perspective stuff that we did a while back. Like I see new things to apply it to help me. And it's been really, like, I feel like my landscapes are weak. I'm better drawing object things than a whole landscape. So that's an area of challenge for me in the next.
Tell us more about your little protractor gizmo. That's really cool.
Yes, I found this at a cute paper store. So it came with the protractor, a little ruler, and they're all kind of like Post-it notes and see-through. So it's a fun tool. And I don't know if you can see it on here, but when I have two sets of lines, and I don't know, like when I drew the arch of this roof, I copied it off my sketch. But when I actually figured out where my midline was for all the lines to connect, it was a little lower. And I didn't understand why that happened. Like, is it just because my sketch is honestly so tiny?
Well, no, if the Abbey is up on a hill, right? You're down below it. Its vanishing point and its horizon line are going to be elevated relative to yours. If that then came down to the ground where you were, and it was on a flat plane with you, then you would share the same horizon line with it. But because it is it is up there on that hill, it gets its very own horizon line and things. So you can have multiple horizon. So that's why kind of the horizon line is relative to the object that you are looking at, and not necessarily to and to you, but also to. So let me actually I'll do a little doodle here on the side that will kind of make this make a little bit more sense.
Okay.
Let me see here. I'm going to change my cam to this. I'll just use the classic, road receding into the distance as an example, because for some reason, whenever somebody is, this shows up in every demo of, everybody's sort of seen that, here's your horizon line. And so your road that is going out to it, kind of the vanishing point is out there. Right? But what happens if you're looking, the road is going out that way, and then starting right about here, there's a hill. Right? Well, now your road is going out here. This part of the road, because it was on this same plane that you are on, it's going to this vanishing point here. But here's this little hill, this blob that is popped down on it. And you're going to then see this road start to go up the hill. And that's going towards a different vanishing point up there in the sky,
Oh.
right? Because you're looking at something on this. Actually, if I sort of simplified this, so this would be if this is all kind of flat up like this, but I'm going to actually turn this into more of a cubist shape. So this little this hill gets cut off here, right? So here I'm going up here towards this vanishing point here, right? And then my road continues on out towards some other vanishing point here off the top of this, because I'm now on, here's plane 1, here is plane 2, here's plane 3. They each have their own vanishing point. And so that's going to change. So I can look out at a, putting my hand in my paint here. So imagine, you know, you've got a series of the long and winding road coming out here, and your road, you see the road coming over here, then you could see that same road in the distance coming out there, and you could see that if it turns and then goes in a different direction, you would see that road kind of coming out there somewhere as it came down and then went over that hill. Or if it kept in the same direction, you might be seeing that road kind of going out there.
Oh, Jack, could you bring the drawing down just a little?
Oh.
Ah, there we go. Thank you.
I'll get rid of this little one in here. So a lot of the stuff which we learn sort of initially about vanishing points and things is if everything is on a flat plane. But then, yeah, just again, you have your some distant hill and your road is going over that. You can get something like this, where this is going out to a vanishing point here, and then it starts from here, it starts kind of cutting up here, and you see your road go over a hill. You're not even seeing that kind of come to some point out there. This is going to one vanishing point. This has its own because it's on a different plane.
All right, I'll have to apply more of that.
Yeah, and so don't worry if you're actually, it's coming out right if you're looking up at the Abbey on the hill and you're saying, wow, that building has a vanishing point that is above the plane that I'm standing on. So that's a good sign. It's a good sign.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you wanted to share or show?
Yeah. Do we have Ray Bonta with us? Because I thought he would appreciate this little wormhole I got inspired to draw.
Ooh.
Like how space unfolds. It just.
Oh, that's. Hey, Ray Bonta, can I bring you into this conversation?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, all right, let's bring in Ray Bonto to discuss curvature of space-time with us. Hey there.
I don't know, I just started with circles and cubes and I'm like, it's a wormhole.
Oh, that's really fun.
That's really.
That's really cool. Yeah, it's neat sometimes when we start a doodle and we don't quite know where it's going. And then it ends up with sort of taking us to this really interesting visualization. And then you find yourself thinking about like, how would I envision that? Like Ray Bonto, I know that you've done a lot of thinking about like, I've got this, here's a concept in relativity. How would I represent that with an image? And sometimes the doodling can take you in really interesting directions like that. That's really fun.
Yeah, it was sort of like a space wormhole, near-death experience thought, like, I don't know. And then I also wrote, and I didn't think about this later, but I doodled the alphabet around the edge, and then I'm like the Alpha and Omega in the Bible, like sometimes forces come in and your hand draws them, right?
That's really, really wonderful. I would encourage you just to kind of just free associate doodle and see what comes up.
I love how different, like my kids will think of different things and that'll change my art. Like I did this one night and I hadn't really talked about it. And then the next day my daughter's painting galaxies. And it's like, it's almost like an energy, like a buzz running through the house. And so
that's really
thank you
neat.
guys.
Thank you so much. It's really good to see you. And you might want to check the chat. There are a bunch of people sending you well wishes and thoughts for healing. And we're sending you our love and our best thoughts, Tracy.
Thank you. I do appreciate it, and I actually really do need it. So.
Right. If there's anything else that I can do to be of support for you at this time, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'll do anything that I can to help you out. I know that these are just incredibly challenging times, and if there's anything that I can do to be of support, please.
Thank you. I'll reach out in an email. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hey, Ray Bonto. Since you're here, anything happening in your journal these days, or anything you wanted to share and show?
My journal, well,
I know
I did get some, but I did get some in, but for some reason, I started taking this tiny book, and well, I might have forgotten to bring it, so perhaps some other time.
Some other time we'd love to check in with that. It's always fun to see what's going on in your journal pages. How did owls go today? Oh, good. Fun. Let's see. I'm going to minimize my screen so that we can make that bigger. Remove this. Oops. There we go. Oh, yeah. I like the way you put the darker value around the outside of that owl. That really made its head pop out. Nice sculpting on that. Oh, and I like the barred owl there. That's really cool. Yeah, you can really use those feathers to contour the shape of that bird. Nice.
Yeah, you started drawing a bit of it. I got into a rabbit hole and drew most of it.
That's good.
That's why I got left behind on the feathers. But I ended up.
That's a very good thing, though. No, yeah. Climb down as many rabbit holes as you can. When something kind of catches your interest and attention, that's really fun, and that really sort of feels like the proportions and the expression of that owl. I like the way that owl face resolved. It really works for me.
So yeah.
Oh, that's fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
let's see what else is going on here. If you, yes.
I did.
I'm going to bring in Evea. Hey there.
Hey there. Sorry, it's that I'd noticed that there'd actually been a couple of really interesting questions earlier in the chat that I sadly forgot to mention. One of them came from my friend Sarah Byfield, and she doesn't know if there's already been a class on this, but is there any kind of shorthand for bird movement and behavior? Because she's been watching these magpies in her yard and seeing them jump around. She says that they have such a rich body language with each other. And so she's just wondering if there's like any way of shorthanding or quickly recording what she sees.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I'll just do a quick little doodle off on the side here. And so these are with magpies?
I think she said magpies, yes.
Oh, what wonderful birds. So let's say you're sketching yourself a little magpie. And then it does its body posture totally changes. All right, so you've got this going, so it goes up into this really erect stance. What you can sometimes do is do that just right on top of that other drawing. And then as this drawing comes down, you kind of fade it out a little bit. And so then you can also use arrows and little notes saying, vertical posture when confronted by other, whatever it is. So you can get these sort of multiple things going on. Similarly, let's say you're looking at the owl and it's sitting there, and then it turns its head to the side. What I'll often do is just off to the side this way, I will just sort of start, here's its head looking this way. And like, oh no, now it looks the other way. So you'll get these sort of, you can kind of, if it looks this way, I'll draw it over here. If it looks this way, I'll draw it over here. And so then you can have little, arrows, or could say, looking back and forth is another way of doing that. So one body, multiple heads or multiple tail positions. If it's, it lands and then does a slow pump up with its tail and then down fast, then I'm going to take this position, draw the different tail here, different tail here. Right. And I'm going to draw a little line, dashed line up and down fast. And then I'm going to write, slow up, fast down, whatever it is. So I can get that sort of tail pump. I can get these different sort of postures and proportions and kind of little moments in there on that bird. So you can animate that little drawing. And those are just a couple of strategies to do that.
Thank you. That's excellent.
The master of catching bird poses is the artist that Walters was talking about the other day, which is John Busby. And John Busby has just incredible fast little sketches. Walters, I saw that you were on earlier. If you are still on, wanted to ask you a question. Walters might have had to bounce. but if you're looking for inspiration with that, that is that's a very good source to look at. I was actually, what I'm going to suggest, in an upcoming workshop theme is that Walters and I get on with some John Busby books, and we kind of flip through them to like why because he was saying the other day that he's just loving John Busby, and I do too. And what I was thinking would be fun to do, it would be for us to share with each other, you know, here's why I think John Busby is so cool. And then for us to pick a few John Busby illustrations and deconstruct those and see what our thoughts are about how John Busby went about drawing those, and see if we can extract from John Busby, from those drawings, a few ideas about the process and thinking behind it. We have a few other resources that help us. John Busby wrote a book about his drawing process that informs us a lot about his drawing process. And also I've got some personal correspondence with him in which he was talking, kind of unpacking his drawing process. And I can share that with everybody here. So that might come in a future workshop, but really wonderful, quick, very expressive drawings of birds in poses that they're only would have held for a moment.
Sounds exciting. There was also one more question, and I think it's by our friend Terry Schoen, who's still here. And it was about, and it relates to a question that E was asking too, about how to find owls. And also E was asking earlier where to see owls as they're sleeping. And then we had some really fun discussion in the chat about where people have seen them. But yeah, our friend here was asking about how to find owls and where to find them.
Okay, oh, hold on. I think I've just muted. There we go. Now, oops. Sorry, we keep, I'm going to hit the, okay, I'm going to hit the, there we go. You've got some questions about owls?
Yes. So when you started talking about owls, I was saying to my mom, maybe we could try, like during the day, try to find some owls, because we do have some owls. Mom's seen a couple, and I saw one flying once. And so I just didn't really know where to look. So I was wondering, where would you usually find an owl sleeping?
So I think this is a wonderful project, but realize you have given yourself an incredibly challenging project. Owls are expert hiders, so super good camouflage. And then during the day, they will often place themselves very close to the trunk and do this. Hold perfectly still. So very often we can spot animals because they're moving, but owls aren't going to be doing that. And so our eye just kind of gazes across, and we associate them with just being, you must be part of the tree. And so in order to find owls, you're either really lucky, or sometimes people will, if you've got friends in the local Audubon Society, they may know places that there are nesting owls, and they can bring you to some of those places. Also, sometimes an owl will have a regular roost. So I would first contact people from your local chapter of the Audubon Society and say, we're interested in finding nesting or roosting owls. Is there a place that we could go and see that where we wouldn't really disturb them? And they might put you onto that. Otherwise, what you have to do is you have to get what's called the search image. And what the search image is this idea of you are going to, you're not just looking at the tree, but you are thinking of the shape of the owl, and you burn the shape of the owl into your head, and then you drop that into the, as you're looking out there, you're going, owl, 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 I know you're here, I know you're here. And you're looking at the tree, which may not have an owl in it, and you're saying, but owl, I know you're here. And your brain is then searching for this form of an owl. And sometimes that allows us to let the shape of the owl emerge from the from what you're seeing. But I would say to contact your local so sometimes there are with owls. E was mentioning that very often that people won't want to say where the owl is roosting because they don't want people to come up to it and go like, "Hey, owl, what you doing?" But there are a number of nests that are often in very public places that everybody knows about, and you can go to those spots and get to see the owl. And sometimes what it takes is kind of meeting people in the Audubon Society and developing some trust with them, so they know that you're not one of these people that will just go like bug the owl and scare the owl off the roost, like, I want to see it with its eyes open. Hey, owl, owl, open your eyes, right? And doing stuff like that. Because if they realize like, okay, you're one of those people, they'll be like, yeah, the owls are out there somewhere in the forest. I'm not really sure where. But if they know that you are people who can also respect those animals, they'll be saying like, all right, we're going to go here and we're going to sit right here and we're going to be really quiet. And then that's a great way to do it. There are someone is just sort of mentioning kind of habitats. E was mentioning, actually, E, can we bring you on because you obviously have owl chops. Let's bring on E into the discussion. Let's see if I can find you. E, if you don't feel comfortable turning on your camera, you don't have to, but you are unmuted and or actually can ask to unmute. You can now unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Sound like Verizon, the commercial. I don't know that much about owls, but we're always trying to find them, and we have an incredibly hard time finding them. We hear them sometimes when it's getting kind of dark, and they seem to like dense stands of trees, conifer-like ones. We're here in, the East Coast. So the deciduous trees have no leaves on it. But even before that, in the fall, we seem to say, we hear them, but we don't see them. We were fortunate enough to see a snowy owl out in Connecticut by the water. They've been kind of around, and during one of the local Audubon bird chats, I brought it up, said, oh, have there been any unusual sightings anywhere? And, they don't want people following them around, obviously, because some people can be quite aggressive, and the poor birds, don't get a chance to feed, and they're stressed out, which is of course a bad thing. So we were fortunate enough to see one, and one day we were out at the beach and it was getting quite late. We hadn't seen it. We had driven away and we came back and we kind of scanned around and said, oh, it must have left its perch. It was quite a distance away. I don't know if it was half a mile away. We used binoculars. Oh, it's a little snowy. It came back. Next thing you know, I see this thing flying across my binoculars. I had my binoculars up and I thought it was a gull. I'm looking at this white thing flying, and then I'm thinking, that looks a little big and white. And I said, could it be the snowy? My husband was, about 20 feet away, and he was at a different perch. And I was trying to get his attention, and it lands on a tree near him. And he's jumping up and down silently without making noise so that we didn't startle the bird or anything like that. And then I think I had mentioned there was a photographer from the Bay Area, in fact, that came out for the weekend just to see the snowy owl. And he was very dismissive of all the other birds, unfortunately, but he came rushing over quietly, said, oh, did you see the birds? So we said, oh, yes, it's perched in the tree. So he goes and he gets his camera and he goes somewhere else. But these other people came by and, they spoke to us quietly and they seemed okay and respectful. But next thing you know, apparently one of them had gone under the tree where the bird was perched because it flew away. It got really scared. So I didn't know what had happened. My husband came back and he said, oh, you know, he went right under the bird and that's why it flew away. So that was rather upsetting. Yeah. So I see why they don't want people to know where the birds are.
Yeah. So sometimes with some of these birds, it's they say that those who know don't tell, and those who tell don't know. Because we do want to basically, if my behavior changes the behavior of the species that I'm trying to get close to look at, I'm way too close. So what people will often do is like, you know, if it's doing this and then I'm getting a little bit closer and it does this, right? Then like, ooh, I better back up. You know, if you're, you know, you can get near shorebirds and you can just listen to their calls. They'll start making a different sort of noise and they go like, ooh, I better take a few steps backwards. And then you take a few steps backwards and they go like, okay, you're cool. And they'll kind of hang up. But yeah, if you're changing the behavior of the animal, then that's a little bit too close.
Yeah, we thought we heard it chirping, but we weren't sure. It didn't sound like, you know, the usual owl sounds that you would read about in books, you know, as we were growing up. But, you know, afterwards we thought about it. I said, you know, was the owl chirping? And I guess it must have been upset. And maybe that's at that point, maybe the person had gotten too close and caused it to fly away. But we weren't sure what was going on because we were where we were. We didn't, you know, we went quietly. My son was in the car, so we went and got him quickly and he came out to look. But we, you know, we try to be as careful as we can not to start because, of course, the less scared it is, the longer time we have to watch it, right? And be in its area so that we can enjoy, you know, just seeing the bird. But sadly, you know, people saw us coming over and I guess suddenly they came out of nowhere. These people, we thought there was nobody there and suddenly, I don't know where they came from. It's really funny. You know, not a lot, but a number of people came out and unfortunately, someone wasn't respectful enough and, you know, they just didn't know maybe, but sadly, like you said, those that don't know.
You know, so should you and the family choose to go owling, it's a wonderful, wonderful activity. Also, a lot of owl exploration is just done by ear, kind of going out in the woods at night and listening for the different sounds. There's a wonderful book that I recommend called Owl Moon. It is it has beautiful, beautiful illustrations and a lovely story.
Is that a picture book? I believe that's a picture book.
Yes, it's a picture book with, so there's a few words in it, but incredible watercolors that just me as an adult, I really, really like. So I recommend that book. It also kind of helps you kind of think about your ethics about owling, because there's a lot of messages in the book about like when you go owling, you have to be patient. When you go owling, you have to be quiet. And it's about a little girl kind of traveling through the snow with her dad, kind of on an adventure to go owling. That's a lot of fun. I recently spotted an owl that was incredibly cooperative. And I'll show you the sketch from it. So this was a sketch of a Western screech owl. And it was sitting in it. It sleeps in by the arbor in front of a friend's front porch. And so they walk out here every day and are just stand out here and, you know, have their coffee and talk. And the owl is so used to them being there that the owl just sits there. And so I was able to walk up and stand right down here and look at the owl and make my sketches of it. And I collected owl pellets from the screech owl that actually, let's check this out. This is pretty cool. So the screech owl, when it eats food, any fur, bones, or hard parts of whatever it's been looking at, those don't pass all the way through its body. It spits them back out in a little ball called an owl pellet. And so I looked down underneath where this little Western screech owl was. And let's see here. I'm going to show you something cool. This is the owl pellet. Oops, that is the owl pellet of the Western screech owl. Most of them were sort of smaller, but there's one big one. And I've been looking at these under the microscope. And under my microscope, these little things that you're seeing here, actually, what I'm going to do is kind of see if I can get this even closer. You might be able to tell some of the ingredients. You can tell what they eat.
Are you muted?
And normally I was looking for like bones of mammals and skulls and teeth, but these are all insect parts. It's all insect parts, except there's a couple of little whiskers that stick out from it. So there's, I think, somehow there's a whisker sticking out of this one and two whiskers sticking out of this one. But the rest of this it's all insect parts, and I can actually identify some of the insects. So it's been eating Jerusalem crickets, and it also ate a carabid beetle. But isn't that fun? So when you do find owls, you can learn a lot about what they eat. But I wish you really good luck finding owls. And if you do find owls, we'd love to hear about your adventures. Okay?
Okay. Now I will try to burn the image of a owl into my mind.
Into your owl. Yeah, that's right. And sort of sometimes when you're doing that, you're then tromping around in the forest, and instead of looking for the thing that looks like the owl, let me get some of this off here. I'll show you something you see. I'll show you kind of what my search image for owl looks like.
Oh, Jack, we're having a little trouble hearing you.
Oh, let me just bounce over to show you. I'll show you it this way. But basically, what I do is I look for just a slightly thicker part of a tree, where part of the tree trunk is coming out, and there'll be sometimes it just sort of feels like there's a bump. There's a little bump on the side of the tree, and that's the only thing I kind of like, oh wow, there's a bump where one shouldn't be. Like that tree has a little bit of a thickening there, and then I look closer and it's an owl, right? And that's fun. So looking for owls, again, their job, the reason they're so successful is because nobody sees them. So if you don't feel bad, that is just evidence of how well adapted the owls are. Don't feel bad about it, because there's lots of other people out there and we don't see the owl. The owls are just expert hiders. And also some of them, another thing you can look for is if, what state do you live in?
Sorry, I am mute. There she is.
Hold on a second.
We're in the state of Missouri.
State of Missouri. All right, so you have screech owls out there, and screech owls will like to nest in holes in trees. So if you find holes in trees about this big, take a look up there and see if there's a little owl face. And don't look for the eyes, because usually if they're in there, they're sleeping. So don't expect to see their eyes, but sometimes you'll see sort of a little strange pattern, and you realize, oh, that's the dark stripes through their eyes. So they will be up in those sorts of spots. If there are places with cliffs nearby, Oh, here's a great strategy. Is to look up online, what do owl pellets look like? And especially a great horned owl pellet. So look up online, what do a great horned owl pellets look like? And then what we do is, as we're hiking around on the ground, I will often walk under trees and I look on the ground underneath the trees for owl pellets. And then I look up in the tree and I know there's an owl up there somewhere because I found the owl pellets on the ground below it. And then you can find the owl. That way you don't spend your time looking up the wrong tree. And so if you find the owl pellets, you then look up and you've got good chances of finding the critter. I was recently in the middle of the Central Valley, and there was outside a motel, there was a little palm tree. And I looked down and there were all these owl pellets under there. And I look up and sure enough, there's a little barn owl tucked right up into the palm fronds, really well hidden. And I no way I would have seen it if I wasn't saying, there is a barn owl in this palm tree. Show me the barn owl, show me the barn owl. Look, there's nothing. Then all of a sudden, like, oh, there it is. And once you see them, they're like, oh, of course, it's right there. But they're just so good at hiding. They blend in like rock stars. It's great. I guess rock stars don't blend in. That's a bad metaphor, but they blend in like rock stars that blend in. So thank you for the question. That was really cool. I'm going to bring on Ivea, who's got, you found a book?
Yeah, I was trying to find Owl Moon and I couldn't. So instead I found Owl Lake.
Owl Lake. Oh, I don't know that one.
Just if people like sort of a different style of art.
Oh, that's cool. Scratchboard.
Yep. Talks about a family of owls who come out at nighttime when the lake is silent so that they can go hunting. So really, really pretty.
Oh, that's really pretty. And it's so much fun to do scratchboard art.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much. It's really good to see you. And thank you for the question.
Thank you for the tips.
Absolutely. Oh, that's a beautiful book. That's a beautiful book. I used to have a copy of Owl Moon, but I gave it to a friend who was an environmental educator and regularly leading night hikes. And then she would sometimes read that before the night hikes that she did. So I gave away my copy of Owl Moon. Otherwise, I would have it here. Gave it away before I was a daddy. So I don't think my daughters have seen the book.
I think I have a copy somewhere. So if I find it, I'll give it to you or lend it. Either way, you can have it if I find it.
Oh, that's a beautiful book. Beautiful book. Oh, I love that one. That's cool.
Me too.
This illustrator had fun.
Oh yeah. And this guy named Tejima, who's from Hokkaido, I think, Hokkaido, Japan. I like the imagery of this one where you can see the owl in the lake in the shadow. So beautiful. Yeah. Anyways, highly recommend. Old book too, back from like 1983. But
that's cool.
Yeah.
I like it. I'm going to jump back over to the community gallery there. If anybody else has any questions, just put up your paw. Oh, you've got Owl Moon. Oh, you've got it. Oh, check this out. All right, just do a page flip for us of some of the illustrations in this, because it is such a beautiful, beautiful book. All right, yeah. So you get there's nighttime sort of tracks in the snow in moonlight. So the illustration challenge is hard, that it's all done with watercolor, illustrating an event at night in strong moonlight on highly reflective snow. And there's all these little elements like little raccoons hiding in the holes in the trees. And the text with this is absolutely beautiful. And it's just so sensitively done. You kind of get the sense that the illustrator and the author have really spent their time in the woods. And they make the calls together. Beautiful, beautiful illustrations. And they give you a bunch of strategies for finding, for going owling in the book, in the course of the story, but also just talk about the waiting and the patience. And it's an absolutely beautiful book. So I would suggest, this is one of those ones that just deserves to be read out loud. Yeah, Newbery winner, wasn't it? Or Caldecott? Oh, wait, hold on. We've got, we need to make you.
It's a Caldecott.
It's a Caldecott. Oh, it's just such a gorgeous book. So yeah, you'll find in that book a number of strategies that will also help you with your owling. And I would love this as a family project. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's great. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That was great. So I'm about to turn off the recording. Before I do, I want to thank everybody for being here. And also thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, questions, and ideas about owls and owling and your book. That was really fun. These workshops are supported by donations from viewers like you. If it's possible to help me out by making a donation on my website, that makes a huge difference to me and my family. If it doesn't work with your funding at this time, I want to encourage you to do an act of kindness or stewardship in your area, just to connect you with the world and the community. Just something beautiful that you otherwise might not have done. And so that also is just a great way of paying it forward. And I am really happy that you were here. I want to encourage everybody to stay safe. Right now in the United States, the Omicron variant is still in its surge. And we just need to really double down, even though we're tired of all the measures that keep us and other people in our community safe. It's a really important time just to double down on that. And we will get through this. We will get through this together. But it takes vigilance, and it takes also just us thinking not as individuals, but as a community. What do we need to do as a community to work with this? And how can I not just take care of myself? How can I be the best at taking care of the people in the larger community that I'm a part of? Our masks, our distancing, our hand washing, our vaccinations are all tools in our quiver to help us. And so I just want to encourage people to be safe, be well, and nature journaling is a great thing to go do during this time, as well as owling. All right? Owling is a certified safe activity under COVID conditions. So it's a really great thing to do. Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you soon.